Good morning again, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. The topic today is Understanding Wandering in Dementia, and thanks again for being with us today. These complimentary webinars are brought to you through a collaboration of sponsorship with O'Connor Mortuary, Care Choices, Hospice and Palliative Services, Caring Companions at Home, and Chatterton and Associates, the wealth management team, as well as, of course, Alzheimer's Orange County. My name is Melissa Klabe. I'm the Director of Education here at Alzheimer's Orange County, and I will be your host today. Our sponsors provide these webinars to you as a service to the community on topics that are beneficial for anyone who cares for and works with older adults. And we have Erin Light with us. She's the administrator at Silverado Senior Living in Costa Mesa. She's a gerontologist with 10 years of experience specializing in dementia care and supporting the needs of older individuals. She received her bachelor's degree in cognitive science from UC San Diego, after which she worked in dementia research in a joint UCSD and Veterans Hospital venture, researching mild cognitive impairment in older veterans. Erin obtained her master's in gerontology from USAIM, a graduate researcher on a joint Silverado Senior Living and USC study, exploring the effects of daylight in reducing depression in memory-impaired adults. Erin also holds a residential care for the elderly administrator certification and a dementia care specialist certification. Erin's passion for older adults experiencing memory loss stems from supporting a grandparent with dementia in a caregiver role during her adolescent years. Erin has extensive experience hosting support groups for various populations, including family members of individuals with memory decline, and also participates in speaking engagements on executive functioning and cognition. Erin's also currently a member on the UCI Mind Community Outreach Committee, and we're so glad to have her today, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenter.
Look forward to diving into this topic with all of you today, as wandering is such a common concern with those who are experiencing dementia. So I want to just start with an overview about dementia. Dementia is an umbrella term that describes a variety of diseases and conditions that can cause damage to the brain, resulting in a loss of cognitive ability. It's not a part of the normal aging process, although you can find a lot of research that shows a increased risk as you age, such as your genetics or how your health is. Dementia is also slow and progressive. It starts with more mild symptoms and does worsen over time. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia. It actually makes up for 80% of dementias. These are a few of the many, over 120 types of dementia. And you can see there's two sections here. There's irreversible dementias, and there's also reversible dementias, which only makes up about 10% of dementia. So on irreversible Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body, frontal temporal, vascular, Parkinson's, Huntington's disease, and CTE. And there's many more, but these are the most common ones. So let's start and take a look at some of the changes associated with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. The most common changes that we typically associate with this, of course, is loss of memory. This is the most prominent, although sometimes it does sneak up on us if we're taking care of our family members. Secondly, language and communication changes. So this could be mixing words. You might have a spouse who is your husband, and they might be calling you their sister or their daughter. Now they've associated you with a family member, so don't take it personally, but that's all that their brain is able to access at that moment, instead of saying that you're their wife, for example. Also, loss of executive function, such as impulse control. So this includes reasoning, the ability to process information logically, judgment, so making decisions properly and in a timely fashion, and also abstract thought, so not being able to think about things that aren't present in reality. Additionally, visual spatial perception changes. This is very common, especially towards the middle stage of the disease progress. Sometimes we hear stories about individuals who are perceiving what is happening while watching the news on a television. They might be seeing stories of the earthquake that just happened, or they might see a fire on TV, and they might think that's actually occurring to them in person at real time, and they're not able to make those spatial perception changes and distinguish that it's not actually happening to them in that real time. Additionally, behavioral changes. So this could be a change in mood. A lot of times we hear as your loved one is experiencing this, or people that you know, we hear oftentimes, my dad was never like this. He would never have done this. He would never cry. He would never get angry or upset or depressed or add any sort of behavioral changes. And it's just really important to think that this is not a reflection of them, right? This disease process is not their fault, and it's also just that our behavior as well sometimes cannot make as much of a difference because they're going through this and their brain is changing. So wandering behaviors among people with dementia. So according to the Alzheimer's Association, 6 out of 10 people with dementia will wander. So it's very common. Anyone who has memory loss is able to transport themselves. They are at a high risk for wandering. Behaviors of wandering can also occur at any stage in the disease, and wandering can also promote the question of memory loss in your loved one or in somebody you know. You might notice a spouse or family member getting lost in the store. They might switch stores without notifying you because they forgot that they went with you to the store in the first place. They could wander in their neighborhood or wander on foot or even in a car. Later in the disease process, you might experience a story similar to that of my friend who took her husband to dinner at a nice sit-down restaurant, watched her husband get up, go to the restroom in another part of the restaurant, and he did not return for about 45 minutes. When she went to look for him, she found him at the bar in another section of the restaurant. He had ordered another glass of wine, an entirely new dinner, and had forgotten he had come with her after he had exited the restroom. Right, so these are just some of the changes in the brain that can cause a person with dementia to become confused and disoriented, even a familiar place. Oftentimes families will say, I don't understand why they don't recognize the house that they've lived in for 30 years or why they don't recognize their grandchildren. Well, if you think about all of the memories that we store, every memory gets stored again each time we think about it. So you have a lot more memories in long-term storage that you've rehearsed over your lifetime versus a grandchild who might be brand new. They have the least amount of memories of a new house, a new car, or a new grandchild. So that really affects how their memory is able to retrieve those as well. So let's go over some of the reasons for wandering. The first is confusion. Memory loss often leads to this sort of disorientation. A person can become easily unable to recognize why they're in a certain location. Additionally, another reason is they're searching for something. So people who wander are often looking for something familiar, especially if they're in a new environment. They may be trying to satisfy a basic need, such as hunger or thirst or going to the restroom, but they may have forgotten what to do or where to go. For example, they may look for a restroom in the garage of their home, or they may end up at a neighbor's house looking for food in the fridge or a place to rest. Additionally, another reason for wandering is the need to escape from a real or perceived threat. So they may become frightened by a noise, stranger, or something they have interpreted as frightening. And wandering is that result of that stress or anxiety or too much stimulation. Now, this could be simply a family football game that you've done every year at the Rose Bowl. You bring everybody over and you have this really loud, exciting few hours with your family. And at this point, it's too overwhelming for them to participate, even though they were the ones who started this so many years ago, right? So we see those changes with that overstimulation quite often. Some other reasons for wandering is reliving the past. So for example, if wandering occurs at the same time every day, it may be linked to a lifelong routine or responsibility, such as a work schedule. At one of our Silverado communities, we had a resident who was only awake at night, and we were trying to reassociate him to sleep in the night and try and shift his daytime hours back to the actual daytime. And we thought this a bit odd until we talked to the family. We found out he was a night security guard for many years. And so after he retired, he is now thinking he was back at work. And so we got him a hat, we got him a flashlight, we got him a clipboard to provide him that purpose of being a security guard at the community, and we stopped trying to redirect him, and he actually didn't wander as often because he had more purpose at that time. Another reason for wandering is agitation. Some individuals find it very comforting to stay constantly in motion. They may be restless or make repetitive movements or pace in one area. This can be a side effect of medications, and additionally, just some of the disease process of certain dementias does present in constant wandering, the inability to sit down or continue pacing. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in this presentation. Additionally, boredom or lack of stimulation, they may become restless due to inactivity and may be unable to process events or conversations. Again, this could result in them secluding themselves because they don't really want to process or can't process what's going on in a family event or a stressful conversation. Searching, so looking for a person or an item that was lost. This is very common. Sometimes if they are going back in time, their brain is telling them, hey, you don't have adult children. Your children are actually 5 years old and you need to go find them because you should be taking them to school, right? So they have that desire to go find somebody from their past that they remember. Could be a specific individual that they might not remember is deceased. Could also be a loved pet from childhood. We see that often as well. All right, so we're going to take a look at some of the dangers of wandering, risk of wandering alone. First and foremost, of course, they can become lost. They may become confused or disoriented. Additionally, they can become injured, dehydrated, or even die from exposure to harsh weather or various other safety risks. Now, we're in California, right? So you might not think that in California this is big of a risk, but I can assure you an extra cold night or even a hot day that we've been having, especially in the later summers, can very much affect an older adult who doesn't have as strong of an immune system, and even in a few hours can really lead to dangerous health conditions, especially dehydration or very strong sunburn as well. Additionally, people with dementia may be mistaken for being under the influence on drugs or alcohol if they're encountered by somebody who doesn't know too much about dementia. And of course, the worst possible scenario is that nobody wants to experience is that they could be a victim or taken advantage of by somebody who doesn't wish to assist them. So how do we prevent wandering, right? So there may not be a warning before the person with dementia wanders for the first time. So it's always important to be prepared. And to be honest, all it takes is one very large event. I'll share the story of a husband and wife who were retired in the early 70s, had their daily routines together every morning. They would watch the news, pay their bills, look through coupons for stores nearby. And in the afternoon, the wife would go to the store to run some errands while the husband would go on his 3-mile jog that he had been doing for the past 15 years. One day she returned home from her errand and he wasn't home, so she began to panic and went out to search for him. Now, this ended well. Luckily, she was able to find him. He was stuck in a roundabout near their home and trying to figure out which way to go. But it was 103 degrees that day, and she did have to take him to the hospital pretty quickly because he was very sunburned and overheated, right? So it had never happened before, and as soon as that did occur, she did start looking for more assistance outside to help this prevent this in the future and provide more safety for him. Additionally, we always want to provide supervision and not leave them alone. This is a really difficult one, especially if you are a spouse or a family member. So because this disease process often creeps up on us slowly, you can easily find yourself isolated at home with your loved one, not wanting to go to the store, to your doctor's appointments, to your lunch dates with your friends, or even to church. So if you take nothing else from this lecture, please realize that your needs are just as important as your loved ones, and that it's really okay to ask for help from friends, families to support you, or to take turns being with your loved one so that you can have some peace of mind. And just think, if you're in the reverse situation, your loved one would want you to continue taking care of yourself, and that also helps take care of them as well. We also want to ensure all basic needs are met, such as using the restroom, eating and drinking. It's tricky because sometimes memory loss comes on with a very strong obstinance of wanting to stay as independent as possible, or it's just simply not wanting to be reminded of a simple task. In this instance, we can change our language from a question to a suggestion that includes two people. So for example, instead of saying, "Did you go to the restroom already? We have to go out," we could say the words, "Let's go to the restroom together before we go to the store," or "Let's head to the store after we go to the restroom." So we've now changed that embarrassing question that's putting them on the spot to more of a prompted activity that you can go through in parallel. This really does relieve the person of feeling like they're dependent to somebody else. Additionally, you want to make sure to check with doctors to see if any of the medications may be causing wandering behaviors. Some medications can produce adverse effects. Some medications work wonderfully. And so when they're metabolizing a person's system, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So please make sure, because all instances are different of medications, make sure to track everything and tell your physician of different symptoms that they're experiencing. And also know that there will probably continue to be some tweaking of the medications along the disease process. This is not a one-size-fits-all. And I try and explain and compare this to if you have allergies, right? So if they're seasonal, you might have started with Zyrtec or Claritin in your younger adult life. You might have outgrown it. Now you're on to a nasal spray, or now you're on to a nasal steroid. So there's always changes in what we need to address throughout this disease process, because your body and your brain are continuing to change throughout this entire process. Additionally, we want to provide visual cues. So people with dementia may forget where they are or where to go, even in their own home. So for example, posting signs on cabinet doors or drawers, anything visually reminding them where they are. So for example, you could post a picture of a toilet on the outside of their bathroom door. That can cue them to use that room instead of the bedroom. Or you could place the words "dirty clothes" above a laundry basket so they don't pull the dirty clothes out of the laundry basket to wear them again. Additionally, you want to remove items near exits that suggest leaving, such as a purse, a suitcase, a coat, or keys. I heard a story from one of our Silverado communities where the staff put a chair and a small TV with a person's favorite TV show just inside the front door because they were exit seeking quite a bit as a brand new resident. And it was really exciting to see and hear that they would sit down and actually watch TV because it was their favorite show. You know, I Love Lucy or something, MASH, any of those old favorites. So if you are at home, however, and your loved one is exit seeking, please do seek additional resources for help. Also, to prevent wandering, trying to avoid boredom by engaging them with that right-sized or repetitive activities that can provide contentment. So here's a few examples. Could simply be holding a newspaper daily, right? So that's something a lot of older generations grew up with every day. Our younger millennials don't really want to read the newspaper. We just check online, right? But there's a normalization of holding a newspaper. Whether or not they're reading it, they understand that that's something they've been doing, and it feels common. It feels like something that anybody walking by would think, oh, they're just reading the newspaper. Nothing unusual about that, right? Additionally, other examples could be folding towels, washing dishes, stacking Tupperware, organizing a toolbox if you have a mechanic at home, separating objects by size, such as books or cooking utensils, or even organizing buttons in a sewing box, right? And you want to make this an activity of value. Hey, Mom. hey Dad, can you help me out? I accidentally dropped this box of buttons and I really need help getting it back together so that I can fix some of my shirts, right? So now they have a value in what they're doing and they're able to help somebody else, which makes it a lot more enjoyable for them. Additionally, providing a safe, uncluttered environment that doesn't cause too much overstimulation. So you might have their favorite music playing softly. So the music that has the most research for remembrance and calming and soothing aspects is between the ages of 12 and 25. So whatever time frame of their life that is, that's the most common music that would be more assistant. Also, you might want to remove stacks of paper that could elicit concern about finances or the bills or have been paid. Additionally, you want to make sure to keep windows open and lights on so that the objects in a room don't blend together. In dim lighting, everything looks the same, and it's really hard to track what's going on in a cluttered room. Also, if you're at home and you're struggling, again, this is a temporary fix, but you could keep the doors locked. You might need a deadbolt or another lock that's placed higher or lower, and replacing a lock set the person can open. But additionally, please remember that if you are at this point where you're needing to resort to these efforts, it is time to seek for additional help. I'll share the story of a loved one who was trying to get out of the back gate, out of the fence, and he didn't have access to the key for the fence, but he did have access to a saw and a hammer, so he simply sawed off the hinges on the fence. It cost a couple $1,000s, but he was able to get out pretty quickly, right? So we don't want to increase that level of agitation and anxiety. And if you can imagine being locked in your own home or being locked out of your bedroom or your garage would also increase our own anxiety without any memory decline. Other special techniques for wandering prevention: covering doors with camouflage posters that make them look like bookshelves. So this is really common, especially in memory care communities, right? So they might come up to a wall that has a nice photograph of a bookshelf, and you might actually want to put some books nearby and a chair that they could sit down with, a little nightstand and a light as well. Additionally, you can put a stop sign or do not enter sign on the door. It might discourage the person from leaving, but again, if they've been in this house for a long time, it might work well once, it may not work again the next day. And this is for all these strategies as well. That's, again, not one size fits all. Some other techniques for wandering and prevention is to secure the yard with fencing and a locked gate, right? So this can easily be done at home. You can also place a lock on the outside of the gate so there's not anything to fidget with or that visual. If you can't do this, make sure you have some gardening tools nearby, perhaps with some empty pots near the door, a bag of dirt, maybe some unpotted flowers near the fence, something that they could be redirected to easily with to assist with an outdoor project. Another example would be to install an announcement system that chimes when the door opens. I had a friend at home who actually installed the sound of a phone ringing at the door. So every time their loved one would open the door, the gate, he would hear the phone ringing. He would actually go back inside to answer the door, right? And that would kind of trigger the family to say, hey, we need to re-engage him in what he's doing today. Installing home safety devices such as latches that limit how much a window can be opened, lights that come on automatically in the dark to prevent falls, stair gates as well to prevent falls, driveway sensors, wireless home securities, or a bed alarm. So there's quite a few of these, but again, these are temporary fixes. The most important thing is to realize this is going to increase your stress level hugely. So even if you do need to keep your loved one at home, making sure to get lots of resources from the Alzheimer's Association or from UCI, from these support groups. There's a lot of great information online as well to assist with this. Additionally, you do want to notify your neighbors and the community members if they have a tendency to wander and ask them to contact you if they see them out alone. This is probably not something you ever wanted to talk about with your neighbor, but it's important to think of the situation in reverse again, right? So if your neighbor was going through this with their family member, would you want them to reach out to you for help? I have to believe you would be very willing to assist somebody in a time of need. Kindness and offering help, that's just innate of human nature in all of us. So we need to provide others that opportunity to be valuable to us as well in our time of need. Additionally, providing a place that is safe to wander, such as a fenced-in yard or meaningful wandering corridors. If you have a small house, you might want to just make sure you have some comfortable chairs and magazines on a side table, or have a nice welcoming computer desk set up with some water bottles and snacks. You could even put a CD player together with their favorite music next to a cozy rocking chair outside, next to a bird feeder that they could watch nature as well. And then I just wanted to put a quick caveat in here. I know we've talked about wandering a lot, but I just wanted to explain the difference between wandering and pacing. So pacing is more deliberate. This is a behavior that can be a sign of anxiety, distress, agitation, overstimulation of noise or social interactions, dehydration, or pain. Never ignore pacing. This is a direct sign of an unmet need and something that needs to be identified and addressed immediately, right? So wandering can lead to pacing, but pacing is more deliberate. It's oftentimes a lot quicker. They could increase the pace at which they're walking. They might be becoming more agitated. You'll see this a little bit different, whereas wandering could sometimes just be curiosity and walking around. Okay, so let's take a look at some precautions and planning ahead. So in the event a person with dementia wanders and becomes lost, it's really important to act quickly, be aware and have a plan and know who you're going to call for assistance. So again, you want to notify those friends and neighbors and know who to contact if they see them out by themselves. Keeping an updated photo and a list of places where the person is likely to wander, such as past job locations, restaurants, and other favorite places. This is really important. Those who wander can get lost and are often very difficult to find because they are very unpredictable with their behavior. They may not call for help, and if they hear their name being called, they might not realize it's them, or they might not want to respond if they're by themselves just out of stress and anxiety. Also important to register them for the Medic Alert Found program. You can search for this online, and that will be helpful to have them in the database as well. So in a care community, how do we prevent wandering for someone who might be at an assisted living or memory care? So at the time of admission, making sure the staff are familiar with the new resident through a very intricate interview process. And you want to make sure you get a good biography on their life, know what their behaviors are, what they enjoy doing, what they have enjoyed in the past. Staff can really design those individualized person-centered activities that are meaningful and appropriate for them, which keeps them focused and calm and less likely to wander. And you want to ask about this. What are you going to do for my loved one? What's important to my loved one might not be something anybody else in the community is interested in. So how are we going to be creative to assist them? For example, they might be a really avid European soccer fan. Right, we just had the World Cup for women. They might want to watch those. There might not be a lot of other residents at the community who are interested in that, but it's really important if that's what they're used to doing, that's part of their routine. We want to make sure that we can provide them access to those really specific activities. Additionally, the new resident's family, it's really important if they can address if there is a history of wandering and if there's any patterns of wandering. Oftentimes, wandering or a big fall or something really prompts families to look for a care community. And it might be a little bit embarrassing to share, but I promise you it will be much more helpful up front to just divulge, because ultimately the staff at care communities who are associated with memory care do have that experience and they do understand, and it's better for us to be prepared ahead of time. We had a very recent move into our Newport Mesa community, and they were able to walk out past the receptionist within about 2 hours of moving in, and the family said that they had no wandering tendencies, and come to find out they actually had eloped 3 or 4 times in the past 2 weeks at home, and the family was just very embarrassed. So we were able to assist them to get them out to go on activities with us. They would come in our cars for leadership members. We would go through drive-throughs and kind of release that need to get out of the community in a safe environment. Additionally, at care communities, when the new resident enters a new facility and environment, they can become confused about time and place, and just making sure all their destinations are clearly marked. So for example, putting a picture of the toilet on the outside of a restroom, putting their name on the door instead of just having the number of the door as well. You might have a community that has memory boxes that display different individual achievements or family photos that they can associate as their property and know that they are in that room as well. And additionally, camouflaging and concealing the exits, again, making sure that it's well secured. And most importantly, using gentle methods to control wandering. People with dementia do read body language and facial expressions very well. So when you're approaching somebody who's trying to get out, remain very calm, approaching them from the front. Don't creep up on them from behind because you will startle them, and that will increase any anxiety they already have. And just speaking very calmly and comfortable. A lot of times there's a reason for wanting to go somewhere. At one of the communities I worked at in Silverado, Encinitas, we had a resident who was trying to get under the fence, and he was digging himself out, and I was able to catch him and say, hey, you know, I'll call him Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, where are you going? Where do you need to go? How can I help you? Well, my glasses broke, and I need to go to the eye doctor to get my glasses fixed. Now that is a very easy solution, but had we not asked, he would have probably continued to try and exit seek, even to the point of digging himself under the fence to get out, right? So we fix his glasses, we resolve the situation. He no longer had any of those tendencies to wander or get out. Additionally, please note physical restraints are not an option. This can cause that premature loss of walking, weakness, poor circulation, incontinence, poor quality of life. Also, chemical restraints such as medications are not an option. This really impairs older adults' loss of balance. They become sedated, increasing their fall risk, and does produce serious side effects such as paranoia and hallucinations, and also just not something ethical that we would ever want to do or have done to ourselves. Also, we can distract and redirect, so focusing their attention on something they have a special interest in or a goal. So for example, if they are hungry and ready for a snack, or ask if they would like to look at photos or listen to music. If they are searching for somebody, for example, their children, say, oh, I think your kids are going to come later. They might be along for lunch. Let's go get our hair done at the salon, or let's go clean up before they arrive. We'll get on a new shirt, and maybe you redirect them to some family albums in their room, and you can go through and have them reminisce on what is important to them. Extra caution needs to be taken when the staff shifts are changing and residents are very able to follow departing staff or visitors out the door. So making sure to have them in scheduled activities, make sure the front desk receptionist has a photo of any residents who have that tendency to exit seek. They will always have that possibility of being able to sign themselves out and to present very normally and to say, oh, I was here visiting my loved one, I'm ready to go, and they can head out the door unless we take those precautions. They also may need to have that security of a memory care unit with door alarms. So a lot of places do have secure doors or egress doors, and it's important if you are looking into those communities to make sure to see, how is this space? Is it something that your loved one will need a lot of extra space, or are they somebody who is going to be more relaxed and enjoying a smaller environment? Some communities have very large grounds. Sometimes the doors, though, to those grounds aren't always open at times. So you want to make sure those are questions that you're asking when you're looking for your loved one as well. And additionally, posting photos of new residents in the break room for the associates to get to know as well. So when wandering is a daily routine for a resident, again, ruling out all the other reasons for wandering first. You could have a new move-in who's just slowly walking around, observing their environment, either by themselves or maybe with a friend. And some dementias do exhibit behaviors like excessive walking. Residents just may be unable to sit. They just might have that constant need to be up and moving. So this is really important for the staff to implement that plan of care to ensure proper hydration throughout the day, that we are the ones who are bringing them the food and even finger food. So for example, instead of them eating a plate of pasta, we might provide them some garlic bread, maybe some raviolis that they could pick up with utensils or their hands as they walk, and maybe a couple of large meatballs that they could dip in some sauce. And so that's a little bit easier for them to handle. You also want to make sure they have sturdy shoes and that we are directing them to chairs to sit down to rest as well. So now what would we do if a person is missing and we've gotten to that point? It's really just important to act as quickly as possible. You want as many people to know as we can. And they may be walking quickly. If they're anxious or stressed out, they may be able to find the nearest bus stop or a taxi or an Uber. And so it's really important first to go straight to the top. Please notify your local police department. If your loved one has a tendency of wandering, please have your local police department's phone number stored in your cell phone for cases of emergencies. And also, most states do have what's called a Silver Alert public notification system, and this would broadcast information about missing individuals to help them being found. Have a photograph on hand with you, including a headshot of the person to show the police and others who are helping to search. You might also want to, if you know what they wore the last time you saw them, because that could make a large difference as well. They might have a hat on, or they might have a really bright red shirt, right? So anything to assist anyone who's aiding you at that time. Additionally, we want to have an updated list of their identifying features, their age, their sex, height, weight, blood type, health conditions, medications, dental work, dietary needs, any other important information that would make a really big difference in their care. Additionally, if you are going to have police assistance and they do have dogs who are out looking in the search, if you're not really in a huge urban area, having an unwashed article of the person's clothing that they can sniff and help to seek out those people in sometimes a nearby forest or a very large park. Also check with neighbors and any local shops and restaurants to see if they've seen that person, and just know the dangerous areas in your vicinity. Do you live near a freeway? Is there a really busy intersection, a creek, a factory nearby, overpasses, a metro stop, a bus station, any of those large places where they could either be in danger or have access to quick transportation out of the area. Additionally, we want to keep a list of places where they're most likely to go. What's their favorite restaurant? What's that coffee shop down the street that they go to every morning at 8 o'clock? What's their favorite shop nearby? Also, be willing to inform as many people in the community as possible. It might be embarrassing, but again, this is your loved one and time is of the essence. So the more people you can help enlist with this search, the better. And people, again, just like we would want to help somebody else, everyone is very willing to assist with this. If the person with dementia is enrolled in a bracelet ID program, you can also include that in the search options. So let's take a look at some of the devices and resources for preventing wandering. There's some low-grade technology. So for example, Medic Alert, found California. This is a 24-hour nationwide emergency response service for those with Alzheimer's disease or memory impairment who are at risk for wandering or having a medical emergency. So that's a good website to go to as well. Additionally, clothing labels, printing clothing labels, they have iron-on ones or even just permanent marker. It's very easy to do. I would just request, please put these on the inside on their tags. Again, anybody who finds an older adult who looks very confused, they're going to search and see if they have on any bracelets. They're going to see if they have a wallet of identification, a phone. They'll probably also check to see if their name is on any of their clothing. But just like we would not want our clothing to be on the outside of our shirts or our glasses, this also puts the older adult at risk, right? So somebody who wants to come up and take advantage of an older adult, if their name is on the outside of the clothing, they can address them and pretend like they're a friend and that they know them and be easily persuaded to go with them somewhere. So here's some other technology options. So GPS is very common. There's personal GPS locators, which would monitor the location through the cell phone. So a lot of our cell phones do have this. Also, there's Take Along Tracker, Go Safe, Pocket Finder, Eyes On, and SafeLink. And additionally, a lot of our GPS watches now will have that capability, like Apple Watch, where you can locate somebody through their GPS as well. So other watches and wristbands, like we mentioned, Kiruv, iLock Technologies, and Tile. This is one we use in the community quite a bit, so you've probably seen commercials for this. It's a small square that you can put on your keys, pretty much anything. So we've actually been using this recently at our Orange County communities. One of the administrators decided to try this out. A lot of newer shoes and sneakers have a brand on the back of the heel. So we've been putting over the brand this tile, and the older adults think this is just part of the new fad, right? Well, we're able to keep track of them very well. This connects directly to your phone. You can also connect multiple tiles to one phone. So we're able to locate not only objects in our community very specifically, but where are the residents as well. So other technology options, there are smart soles, gpssmartsole.com, that could be inserted into any shoe. This includes a wireless charger and tracing application for your cell phone. Phone applications, again, many smartphones have that real-time GPS tracking abilities, and there's many applications available, mostly not at too much of a cost, some at no cost. So you can visit your app store or speak to your cell phone provider for more information on how to turn this onto any phone. Again, if they leave their phone at home, we're going to be looking for other options. Okay, so additional to Alzheimer's Orange County, there's other places as well if you'd like additional information. As was mentioned, I've been assisting UCI Mind recently. They're one of 32 designated Alzheimer's disease research centers in the nation, with over 100 researchers who are on cutting edge research studies as well. So you can learn more through them as well. And additionally, our Silverado communities. So we only specialize in memory care. So this is a really important resource. Even just come in for free, come in for a tour. We have 3 communities in Orange County. Newport Mesa is my community, Tustin and San Juan, and we're opening another 4th community in Brea, so North Orange County. But we want to help you get where you need to go with your loved one. So if you're not looking for that community and you just need resources, please come on in. We have support groups at Newport Mesa every 3rd Wednesday of the month. I'm facilitating those right now from 10 to 11. And also every Friday, rain or shine, we do have a lunch buffet for families, visitors, professionals in the area. So feel free to come on in, come play with our pets, see the children of our associates who are welcome to come to work. And we also do have 24-hour licensed nursing. So if there's any of those emergencies, we can provide small respite stays as well as long-term care. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Erin. That was such a valuable topic and such useful information for all of us. So we're going to open it up to the question and answer period in a minute. If you do have any questions, you can go ahead and type them into your question box in the control panel. We have a few good ones already, and if we don't get to all of them, we will make sure that Erin does see your question and she can email you a response. And if we do run a little bit past 12:30, you're welcome to remain online, but if you need to leave the webinar, you can. Just remember, if you want to earn that CE credit, you do need to be online for the full 60 minutes. I want to take this time to thank our sponsors once more for making this presentation possible. We're so grateful to Chatterton and Associates, the wealth management team, O'Connor Mortuary, Care Choices Hospice and Palliative Services, and Caring Companions at Home. Don't forget our next month's free webinar on hearing loss and cognitive decline. It's going to be on August 13th. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and ask Erin our first question, and that is it better to have images or words as visual reminders?
So if you're talking about posting something in your home or in a community, most of the time photos go a lot further. Words can be confused, they can be mixed up. That's part of that visual perception. So either are okay, it's just if they are not responding to the words as well. Pictures are universal in any language.
Wonderful, thank you. How does the staff address or alter activities that residents are no longer able to do? For instance, if they had arthritis and they can't knit anymore, what do you do for meaningful activities for those folks?
Sure. So I'll give some examples. At Silverado, we have different levels of cognitive and physical abilities. So for example, if somebody enjoys knitting and they're not able to anymore, we might have them lead the class if they're still able to verbalize and help somebody. So they might be in a small group with 2 or 3 other residents, and then they might be able to say, okay, now take the yarn and thread it through here, rather than doing that with their hands. Additionally, if we have somebody on staff or even a family member who can come in, we'll do what's called hand over hand. So we might actually hold their hands with ours and we can together knit. So that's always exciting as well. But we always look for creative ways of how to adjust it. Most importantly, trying to address all of the senses. So what does it feel like? Am I feeling different types of yarn? How do the spools feel? What texture is this? What am I smelling? What am I seeing? What am I experiencing at that time?
Thanks, those are really great suggestions, really, really helpful. Another question here, does it make a difference in wandering behavior if the person with dementia has difficulty walking? And can they forget that they have to use a walker?
Yes, actually, we see that really often, and it really increases fall risk. It makes it very difficult for somebody with dementia to learn how to use a walker once the memory impairment has started. So a lot of times families will elicit the help of a physical therapist. If you have Medicare, you can get a couple of sessions for a few weeks, but sometimes it's best to pay out of pocket. You might not increase their ability and their movement, but we want to focus on maintaining whatever muscle strength and motor memory they do have in the muscles and their brain memories that they have currently. And yes, it does make it difficult. There is always a tendency to wonder whether or not you can ambulate as well, but it makes it a lot more, they're at a very much a higher risk if they are in a wheelchair, because if they have that anxiety and they need to get out a door, they might actually try and stand up from that wheelchair to push the door open if they can't do it sitting down. And they might forget that they don't have that level of strength anymore. So it actually sometimes does put them at a higher risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's an important question. How would you address a wanderer with aggressive behavior? Maybe they're combative, aggressive, have agitation.
So any type of behaviors, it's really important to figure out what is the trigger. So normally there is something behind the behavior that is triggering it. A lot of times they could be in pain and discomfort. So you or I could go to our medicine cabinet and grab a Tylenol if we have some sore joints, or if we worked out in the yard, a little tight today, we can help ourselves to that. Somebody who has arthritis or osteoporosis or joint pain, they might not express that pain in ways that we can understand as easily. So they might not verbally say, I'm in pain or I'm in discomfort. They might express it aggressively. So for example, if I have joint pain and I know that you're going to come over because you're a caregiver, you're going to come to me and you're going to try and assist me up, I might actually put my hand out or my foot out to keep you away because I know if you touch me, it's going to hurt. Or I know that if you're trying to help me sit down, sitting is actually a lot more painful than me walking around. So if it's discomfort related, again, you want to rule that out. We don't want to go straight for psych meds if it's just adding a routine Tylenol or a little bit stronger pain med on every day. Additionally, there's psychological discomfort, right? So they might be aggressive because they think they are in danger or they think someone's hid their family. Also, if they're a veteran, PTSD from different wars, there's different triggers for that as well. Some of them have very strong associations to any visual cues as they age because that impulse control of holding back is no longer there. So it's really important to look what is the underlying? Is it at the same time every day? Are they sundowning? Or do they have an infection? Did they hurt themselves and they're unable to express that? Or do they think they're under attack?
Those are great suggestions. Can a resident with dementia be kicked out of a residential care facility for excessive wandering?
So excessive wandering, I would love to say no. I know this is not always the case. This doesn't occur at Silverado unless you're at a risk that is putting yourself in severe physical danger. Like if you are eloping and you are climbing the fence, you need to figure out why that behavior is occurring and work towards that first. I have heard of communities, sadly, that do not go that extra length to understand a resident who does have wandering behaviors. It could just simply be that they see the outside and they're used to going outside every day, but perhaps that community, again, has an outside door that is only open for a couple hours in the afternoon, or that they need to be escorted outside. So those are really a lot of the questions proactively that are important to ask. How do you handle somebody who needs that extra space to walk around? And just tell them you want to know what is their limit. At what point do they seek to send a resident to a psych hospital or to the ER just because they're concerned about them walking around, which is very sad ultimately, and there should be other ways of addressing it, but just take note of that if you're looking for placement.
Great, thanks for that answer. We'll ask a couple more questions here, being mindful of the time. To your knowledge, is wandering ever a phase that discontinues at some point?
Absolutely. Wandering can simply crop up at any time, just like a lot of other symptoms. Unfortunately, sometimes wandering stops after a fall, right? So if they're wandering at home, they have that anxiety, they lose their footing because they're moving too quick for their body reactions, and they have a good fall. Now they're actually physically impaired and not able to wander as often. So sometimes that need to wander would still be there, but they can't actually physically go through with it. Other times, yes, wandering slows down or stops. But honestly, if they're wandering and it's not a danger to themselves and they're not showing exit seeking, that's additional physical exercise that they're able to get. We just need to make sure they stay hydrated, that they're getting proper nutrition, that they are sitting down to rest, and ultimately that will keep their body healthy longer.
Great, wonderful. So we have time for a couple more questions. I want to remind you that we will provide Erin's email address. She has graciously said that she would love to answer anyone's questions that we haven't been able to get to after the webinar is over. So I know it's 12:30 now. I'm going to ask one more question here. What would be some examples of redirection if wandering toward the exit door on a patio at a facility that is not allowed to be locked? So it looks like if you can't lock the door for one reason or another, but you don't want the person going towards that door, what's maybe an example of a way that you might redirect that person?
Sure. Well, first of all, make sure if you're part of the staff that you are increasing rounds on not only that area of the community, but on that resident additionally. They might need some extra oversight to get them through this phase. One thing I did at a previous community was actually put a sign on the inside of the door that said memory care entrance. So as comical as that might sound, it actually worked pretty good because nobody wanted to go through there because they didn't want to go into memory care in the first place. So something simple like that. It could also be, you could put a sign that says laundry, no outside exit, or no exit to the parking lot, something that, again, if they can read and process that appropriately. But I have residents at my community, and I don't have a fully secured doors. I have egress doors, right? So they're very well monitored, but I have residents who can read. Push the door for 30 seconds and it will open, and they'll read that and they'll push the door and the alarm sounds. So making sure you have multiple layers in place. I would definitely suggest putting some sort of alarm that attaches to a radio, the nurse's station, or somebody's personal cell phone to alert them that that they're trying to go that way.
Great suggestions. Thank you again so much, Erin. Thanks for sharing your time and your expertise with us. This is going to conclude our webinar. Please watch for the survey that will open up immediately when this webinar has ended, and it will also be emailed to you 1 hour after the webinar ends. This is, again, required if you want CE credit. Please do watch out for the flyer for our next webinar on hearing loss and cognitive decline. Please feel free to forward that to anyone else who may be interested, and do check out our website, alzoc.org. You can view any of our past webinars, but you will not be able to get CE credit for those, unfortunately. Thanks again for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, Erin.
Thanks for having me.